Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. How about that machine shop tour? That was so cool. I could have stayed there and watched him do stuff all day. Don is such a cool part of the Janus team here, and we are so glad that he is here as part of the team. So we are so glad you got to join us for that in a little bit. We are off and running onto our third workshop this morning. So in just a couple minutes, I'm going to kick it over to John and Jordan in the back of the shop. But I just wanted to check in with everybody real quick and make sure you're all having a good time. Remind you to go to our Rally Hub website. That is janusmotorcycles.com/rally. There's a link at the top of the website in the big green banner, and there's a link at the bottom of the website. That's where you're going to find everything for the weekend. The itinerary, all the live streams. We'll upload the live streams. We're working on getting the last 2 tours uploaded. You'll be able to rewatch all of that stuff on the website. And surprise, you heard it here first. I just made our bingo cards live. So if you want to get on the website, you can see the bingo cards and you can start planning your ride for this afternoon. The bingo ride does not start until 1 p.m. So we're relying on the honor system, but we wanted to give you a little extra time, plan ahead, plan your route out, and pick your card. There's 20 different cards to pick. So you can look through and see what might be the best pick for your area and what you like to ride to go see. We are also running 2 promotions right now. The rucksack and messenger promotion will end at noon. That's $50 off of rucksacks and messenger bags. You use MOTO50 is the code. And I just made the jacket promotion live until 6 p.m. today as well, too. We had a couple people say they wanted a little extra time to think about it. So we extended the promotion until 6 p.m. today to get $75 off of one of our leather gold top jackets or our wax canvas Vanson jackets. You use the code JACKET75. That's how you get all the good stuff. So we're going to kick it over to Jordan and John in the back of the shop here real soon. Before we do that, the next stop this afternoon is at 1 p.m. That's the bingo scavenger hunt launch. That is how that's the big event for the weekend, and that's what we're going to be doing at 1 p.m. We'll be telling you all the rules and walking through everything at 1 p.m. 1 p.m., 1 p.m. Don't miss it. That's the big stuff. Everything's on the website, so go hop onto it. We're glad you're here, and I'm going to kick it over to John and Jordan real quick. Have fun, guys. See you later.
Mute button. There we go. Sorry about that. Take 2. Yeah, we're back here in the pinstriping area, as you could tell. So we're gonna hop over here with John. He's gonna give us some tips on a 1,000-mile tune-up.
Okay, we'll try this again. No, it's advertised as a 1,000-mile tune-up. I'm going to go over just basic tune-up, probably touch base on everything. The 1,000-mile doesn't include everything that we have on our checklist. We use the same checklist that's in the owner's handbook. So if you have that, just go over that when you, if you want to see what I'm going over here, it'll be the same thing. And I'm not going to actually do everything, but I'll kind of walk through what we do. And there are some things I'll show you, give you some tips. Some things I'll point out that aren't mentioned in here, but things to look out for. And we'll see how this goes. This is a lot different from last year. Last year we had a group of people in here, and there's a lot of back and forth banter and questions. So this will kind of go depending on how you go with it. You know, we get some questions in here and get some feedback too.
Yeah, we do have Richard sitting over here. He's watching the comments and the questions, so he'll put anything in, and we'll try to answer everything that's coming through.
Okay, let's start. I might jump around a little bit. There's some things I do with the bike off the service stand and off of this raisable stand and on the service stand so I can get the wheels up. Engine oil, that's something that you should be checking the level of regularly. I mean, not just at a periodic maintenance. And I always just check it by looking at the sight glass. On this one, hopefully you can see that. The oil level is right in the middle there in the sight glass. And so that looks good. There's also a gauge on the oil filter, the dipstick. But this is so much easier to check. That's what I always do. To change the oil then, it's just a drain plug on the bottom. And it drains out best if you do that with it warm. And once you've got it drained, you want to check the oil filter. And that, we're come around here. There's an oil filter behind this. That's a 24 millimeter socket to fit that and get that off. And I'm not going to take this off, obviously, because we've got oil in there, but I do have what you will see when you open that up. You take the cap off, it holds a spring in, and then the spring fits on this filter. It's just a water mesh filter that's in there, so there's nothing to replace. We just clean it up. I usually spray it off with some brake solvent or something like that, and then blow it out with air. And then you can put it back in. Now these, if you're familiar with Honda engine designs from this era, there is also on the end of the crankshaft on the right side a little centrifugal spinner that is also functions as a little bit of a oil filter. It'll collect some sludge in there. So if you ever have opportunity to have the right side crankcase cover or the clutch cover off, that's something I check. You can remove a few screws and clean that out. Well, there's never been much in that. And then fill it, and we use the Spectro. I mean, that's what we advise is very good high quality oil. 10W30, if you're in a hotter climate, you may want to consider like a 10W40, but this is good general purpose. And if you don't have access to this, there are a number of high quality motorcycle oils out there. We recommend the synthetic blend and 10W30. A motorcycle oil has some extra ingredients in there to deal with the transmission and also the clutch. It's a wet clutch in this, it runs in the oil.
Audio is good.
Okay, video's not great. Sorry about the video quality coming through here. Yeah, it's our first time doing this, so we're trying to figure it out as we go.
Yeah, well, I've found wireless can be a little spotty back here, so maybe that's what we're doing.
That could be it.
Yeah. Another thing that we do is check the valve clearance. And of course, we have a video out there to do that, so I'm not going to go into that in much detail. But it's pretty simple to do. One thing I will mention, we've had some owners to turn the crank and get it at top dead center. You remove this cover, and then you can use a 14 millimeter wrench to turn the crank. And this one gives you a viewing port onto the flywheel. You can see the marks. And it's not always easy to see those marks. We've had some where it was real difficult to see them. I don't know if the marks weren't imprinted quite as deep. And I'm aware of a couple bikes where we never could find the marks at all. There were some numbers stamped on the flywheel there. I've ran into one of those myself, and a customer also mentioned that. And so in those situations, if you, when you're spinning the crank, and you see, after you see the intake close, right after that, the piston's going back up on the compression stick. And there's a pretty broad range there where the valves are both closed. There's the lobe on the can would be way down. And so as long as you can tell that there's a little bit of play in the valves, it doesn't need to be right at top dead center. But that's, of course, a recommended place to go if you can find it. But if you don't, about 180 degrees from where the intake valve closes, and you'll be good for doing that. Air filter, you remove these two Allen bolts, and then the air filter sits back in there. It generally doesn't get too dirty. If you're running in real dusty conditions. It's probably good to check that. And one thing to be aware of, there are some of these air filters. Oh, I don't have one back here to show you. Some manufacturers recommend treating the air filter with oil to help capture more dirt. Don't do that with ours. Ours is run through EPA certification without that, and the carburetor is calibrated to be a dry filter. And if you do treat it with oil, it can affect the air throughput at higher engine speeds, and you may get some running issues. So just be aware of that. Spark plug, I mean, that's something most people know how to do. Let's just take this one off though and see what it looks like. It's an 18mm wrench or socket. And you can see the color on that. I mean, it's a nice clean plug. Actually, this one looks fairly new. It may have been replaced recently. These engines come with, we leave in the spark plug that they ship with. But if you ever need to change it, what we use is NGK, is what we recommend, a DR8EA. It gives you the right size and heat range. And if you're checking the gap on the spark plug, somewhere around 32 thousandths would be pretty good for that. The bike we're working on here, I don't know if you noticed, this is Halcyon number 68, which Richard has used on his long rides, the cross-country ride from 2 years ago, I guess, wasn't it? And he's done a couple other 1,000-mile rides on that. So it's gotten a good workout and holding up pretty well. Spark plug, fuel system, check for leaks. I mean, leaks are going to be pretty obvious. You'd probably be aware of them without looking specifically. And we haven't had much of an issue. But just look over the hose, the filter. Another place you might see something is around the gasket for the float bowl. But we haven't had issues with leaks at all. Other than the vent line. And some of you are aware of that, because the vent sticks up in the tank about like this far. If you do overfill it, or if it gets leaned to this side when the tank is full, you will see a little gas dripping out from that hose down below. And that's an explanation for that. Nothing to get too worried about. Throttle. Just check how much free play. That it turns freely. This one, you see, there is very little. If you need to adjust that, you can use the adjusters down here. And in case you're curious about the carburetor, there are two cables that come to that. This one that goes to the center slide is the throttle that controls your speed. And this other one, because these carburetors are running so lean, they do need a accelerator pump. And that's what this second cable, this one that comes off to the side, is a little accelerator pump that it works down to the side there. So you get good response when you open the throttle. Clutch. That's a little loose. That's kind of a personal preference too, in terms of adjustment for the clutch. As long as you get it completely disengaged when you pull it in. Some people like it so that it's adjusted real tight, and as soon as they start pulling it disengages the clutch, and some people like a little more movement. There is an adjuster up there Some people have commented that it doesn't seem to stay put. It's a very common motorcycle cable adjuster. And there's also an adjustment down on the engine at the other end of the cable, and that one's a more secure adjustment, so you can consider changing it there as well. Throttle, clutch, lights. Let's go over the lights. I mean, we just run through a quick check to make sure everything's working. We've got headlight, high beam, low beam, turn signals, left, front and rear working, right, front and rear. And the tail light is on, brake light comes on, and you should check the brake light with both the front and the rear brakes to make sure they're both activating it. The front brake works off a simple mechanical switch right up here, just off of the brake lever. And we have had some of those go bad, but it's a real easy replacement up there. The rear brake is activated by hydraulic brake pressure on when you press down on the rear brake pedal. And we've had some of those go bad as well. The problem with that is that they, because they are in line, in the brake line, if you have to replace that, it involves rebleeding the brakes. But keep an eye on those. Make sure those are kinds of things you shouldn't be checking every 1,000 miles, but you should check it. It's a good idea to look at those every time you go out. Make sure you have brake lights. You don't want to go without those. Bearings and things we're going to check later. The brake fluid levels and caliper action. Both the front and the rear master cylinder have windows to check the brake fluid level. And this one I can see, I mean, there's a little bit of an air bubble at the top, so that gives you an indication where the brake fluid is. And so it's in good shape there. The rear brake, there's also a window, but we actually, when we ship those, it's filled up above the window. And some people have asked about that because they look at that window and say, well, I don't see brake fluid. Well, it's actually above that, and you're not seeing any line at all because the brake fluid is up above. So once it gets down and if you can see the line or the level of the brake fluid in the window for the rear brake, it's probably time to add something to it. And check that for leaks. I know that for brake leaks right now, it's been an issue for some of the new owners. We had a bad batch of front master cylinders, and we had some leaks around the gasket there. And that's been very obvious to people. I think we've resolved that on new production ones, and we're getting parts out for people that have had leaks in the field. The connections here, the banjo bolts at the master cylinder and at the caliper, look for leaks around those. And it's good to check obviously you know if your brakes are working, but it's good to check if you got a flashlight here. You should see the piston back in there move out. It's hard to see on your video, I imagine, but I mean, we can see it here. It moves out a little bit against the rotor, pushes the brake pad against the rotor, and then comes back. You want to see it moving both directions, so you know it's not dragging on the rotor at all. And do the same thing for the rear brake. Let's see. Checking things, things that have, I mean, one of our checkoffs is to check fasteners for security. I mean, we do a quick once around looking for things that are coming loose, and we very seldom, I don't know that I've ever found that, but you know, checking bolts, just kind of grab things, wiggle them around a little bit, make sure nothing's loose anywhere. a particular area is probably more around the rear wheel, the rear fender, because there's so many more connections around here. Just looking for things out of line, things that are loose, things that are wiggling. A couple things I will mention in particular that you may want to check are the front engine mounts up here and down there. It's a good idea to try to tension those. There's one up here and one down below. We've noticed those, I don't know if the bolts are stretching a little bit, but it seems like those have loosened up a little bit over time. And those are a M8. So a little smaller. The rear engine bolts are M10s. They're bigger. We haven't noticed that so much with those. But in particular, the front engine mounts I would check. And the exhaust mounting nuts up here, the studs go into the head and then there are nuts. The gasket, the exhaust gasket, let me show you what that looks like. It's just a copper gasket and it's hollow. This is very lightweight. It compresses. When you fasten the exhaust on there, this is one that came off. Yesterday I replaced exhaust on a bike. And you can see how it's pretty well flattened out. We don't reuse these when we put, if we've ever had the exhaust off or anything, we put a new exhaust gasket back in there. But it seems like these maybe compress a little bit more over time, and sometimes the exhaust will loosen up a little bit and needs to be tightened. And to do that, just to explain, come back around over on this side. These are double nutted just to make sure we don't have them backing off. So to tighten them, you have to first loosen the outside nut. So it frees up the inside one, which is actually goes against the flange. And then you can, it feels a little loose. Go ahead and tighten that up. And then so that's also something to check. Be a good idea to check that. Well, it has gotten so loose on some, I think, that we had like a gasket blowout, or people were noticing exhaust sounds coming from that. So something to be aware of and check. Let's see, where's Lewis? Wheels and spokes, tire wear. I mean, it's pretty obviously checking the wear on the tires. I think now these are different. We have Kenda tires on this, so they look a little different than yours. But you're gonna look for the wear grooves like all production tires have at this point. And the pressure, standard street tire pressures are 36 on the front and 32 on the rear. Side stand operation. Just make sure it's moving smoothly, not sticking. Idle speed. I don't think I'm going to go over that.
I think we have a video on how to check and adjust that.
I think so. Shock absorbers, rear swing arm. Oh, let's look at the front, the pivots here for the front end. Those don't get tightened down snug. They need a little bit of the ability to turn, or else it would just lock it up and you wouldn't get any movement. So I just checked to make sure that there is some movement there. And there is a grease zerk on the back side. Take that cover off. You see the grease zerk, so give it a shot or two of grease every 1,000 miles or two. And let's see. The engine stop switch. Well, this one's, we're prototyping some new switches on this one, so this has a different stop switch. On yours, all the production bikes we have out there, the engine kill switch is up here. You pull it in. And we did discover we had, last year at some point, we had some that when you pulled in the kill switch, it would die momentarily, and then it would start running again. The CDI must have been sensitive enough that it would see it wasn't getting as strong a signal, but then it was still enough that it could actually kick in. So check that. Make sure if you hold somewhere above idle, if you hold in the kill switch, you'll see that it'll actually stop the engine. And we have a fix for that if yours doesn't work right, if it starts running again. And battery charge is something else we usually check when we're doing service. One thing is just to check and see what the charge is on the battery when it's sitting with the key off. And normally it'll be above 12 and a half. It could be up to like 13 volts or so. And then I also like to start it up and see what voltage is doing when the engine is running. At an idle with the charged battery, you usually see it close to 14 volts. And above that, at higher engine speeds, you should get up to, you probably see 14.4, 14.5, or maybe even above that. If it's above, if you see 14.7, 14.8, or even more than that, that may be a problem. And we have had a few rectifiers that I think we're putting through too much output, particularly in hot weather. Batteries seem to be more susceptible to being overcharged. And we've had some problems with that, and that's another thing we're looking at to try to make sure we get the best results that we can for there. That is most of what I want to do up here. Now I'm going to take it down and I'll put it up on a service stand so I can get the wheels up in the air and show you about moving the chain and checking the spokes.
There been any questions rolling in, Richard, that you've seen?
Just a question about how many miles is on 68. Answer in the comments.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. You guys are working in the comments too.
Let's see. What's the average expected mileage on Halcyon tires?
So the question is, what's the average expected mileage on Halcyon tires?
What would you say, John? What are you seeing? We're not wearing them out.
We're not wearing them out. I mean, we even on this one, we put different tires on it, not necessarily because it needed them, but we were
testing
trying out
out
some different tires. Yeah.
I think cross country, when I went cross country, that would be what, 3,200 miles. The rear tire we did replace, but it already had 1,500 on it. So maybe 4,000 to 5,000 would be definitely a rear tire if you're riding it hard. But it's just not putting out a huge amount of power, and it's very lightweight. So it's a good estimate.
If you're not familiar how the service stand works, we'll demonstrate that now. Slide it under, and that this fits right under the cross piece for the foot peg mount. And you rock the bike back, and you push on this. And then you've got your rear wheel up in the air. Chain tension. That's maybe a little bit loose for the Halcyon. When we check it, the diagrams we have in the owner's manual, some people have questioned how that works. By usually, pushing it up and then measure from that to, pushing it down. And this looks like it's, without measuring it, I think it's over an inch. And usually for the Halcyon, I forget what we have in the specs, but I usually think 3/4 to an inch or so. So that would be due. It's not terribly loose, but it could use a little adjustment. It also feels fairly well oiled. That's good. Just to show you briefly, I won't go through the whole oiling. We also have some Spectro chain lube. And I like to put that on the inside of the chain. For when it goes around the sprocket, any force will be pushing it out rather than in. So I find the snap link. I'm not going to bother doing that here. And then just start and go around, get both sides and move it a little bit and do another section. Trying not to get anything on the bike itself. If you get the better aerosol cans with chain lube, it's a waxy kind of a thing, and it will dry pretty soon after you put it on, so it's not making a whole lot of mess. It's good to check the spokes periodically. And I mostly just look for checking for loose spokes. And I'll start at the air valve and just work my way around the wheel and just see how they tighten. If you go around, you'll get a feel for it pretty quick, and you can tell some of them are a lot different than others. We did have a batch of wheels that came in without the spokes tensioned. I think we've caught most of those in service so far, but you want to make sure they're not too loose. I did have one came in that I could actually move the wheel back and forth a little bit. I imagine it felt a little squirrely even to ride it. That's not safe. I mean, that's something you want to look for. I thought the wheel bearings were bad, but it was actually the spokes were just loose. But while you've got it up here too, you can check you want to make sure there's no slop in the wheel bearings, so just kind of move it back and forth. There shouldn't be any play there. Should turn freely. Look on the wheel itself to see if it has any damage. You'd probably be aware of that if it happened. But it's good to get in the habit of inspecting that. Let's see. Anything else on the back end? I don't think so. We've done the chain tension and lubing, the spokes. The spokes you also want to check on the front wheel. And if you have one of these service stands to get the front wheel up, if you put some weight back here, 20 pounds is about the right amount to balance it so the wheel goes down. And then you can spin the front wheel and check things there. I do want to put some weight on there so we can look at check for how freely it spins. At this point, when you get that front wheel up, then you can be checking your steering. Make sure that turns freely all the way to both stops, that aren't any wiring or cables that are getting in the way to keep that from turning. You can check for, this is to check the head bearings, which are in here. There are tapered roller bearings, like wheel bearings at the front and the bottom of the headset there. And you don't want those to be loose. So you can wiggle this back and forth and see if there's any movement. And there's nothing there.
Those are the same bearings that Don was just telling us about. 0.2 of a thousandth.
Okay.
Clearance.
Yeah. Now let's put that back down. take it back off of the stand. And we'll check the shocks. Make sure you've got free movement and that they're working properly. You can kind of hear them activating there. Let's see, how am I doing? Where's the list?
Doing great.
With the Phoenix and Griffins, they have, of course, have the rear suspension with the swing arm back there. And on current models, you also want to check they've got a pivot bolt for that. And that also needs to be a little bit loose. It needs to allow movement. But also, something that you want to be checking is we have seen a few high mileage rear suspension bikes where we actually got a little bit of wear. And if you take the rear wheel, and if you're looking for back and forth movement, that's also something to be checking. If you sense that there's a little back and forth movement at the back end, it could be from shocks or from spokes, like I mentioned before, or wheel bearings, or you could also maybe be seeing just a little bit of movement in there at the pivot. And if you're getting that, that's something we need to take care of. And the other thing that's on here for the rear suspension bikes is there's where the chain goes over the swing arm. We have a piece of Teflon wraps around to protect that swing arm, and that's an item on here too. I forget what it's called. No, I don't see it. But that's drive chain friction plate. Check. That's what we call that, the friction plate, and just make sure that that's not worn through, or that it's still in place. Okay. I think we've covered most everything. There are a couple places you might want to check. A few places where we've had some issues with cracking items. An early one was with the chain guard. We had some cracking back here at the mount and some cracking up here. We've had less of that. It used to be mounted, you can see a hole there. It used to be 2 bolts going that way on the mount. I think that was causing more stress. We now have them 2 going up and down. But check for cracking around here on the front, or here, or also just on this tab back there. We had some fenders, rear fenders, that I think weren't shaped quite right, and it put more stress on the mounting points. You might want to check for cracks around the fender right here in the front of it where it mounts to the front mount. We've had some cracks on a couple of those. And on the grab rail back here, we've had some cracks where it welds, this cross piece where it welds on. So a couple other places to look for that. And some early bikes, I think we've got most of these fixed, but the front fender mount, we've beefed it up since then, but some of these were cracking up here, and you don't want that coming loose either. It can drop down on the front tire, so it's a good idea to keep an eye on. And one other thing I would like to mention, we've started shipping out our 2nd generation or digital speedometers this year. And so it's I mean, this has had it for almost 2 years now, I think. It's had it quite a while, and it's working well. So we're getting pretty good experience with those, and we're hoping that it solves problems we've had with our mechanical speedometers. But if you have one of these, and you want to do some configuration, change to the settings, like the time and the date, check with us. If you don't already have some instructions on doing that, we've put together some step-by-step instructions to go through and do that. If you don't understand the whole process. We've had a couple people who intended to go in and change the time and ended up resetting the speed calibration. And instead of the sensor on the wheel gets pulses from every time a spoke goes past. And the standard configuration on that is it's over 5,000 of those that it gets per mile. And if you go through and are just kind of taking defaults and not know what you're doing, it resets to 1. So every time one of those spokes goes past, it thinks it's gone a mile. And you can rack up a lot of miles real quick on your odometer. So just be aware of that. And we have some instructions that step you through that pretty easily and make that pretty easy to do. I think that's what I've got.
We got one great question.
Okay.
Ian says, I'm not likely to try this maintenance myself. Is it a safe bet to have a local shop try it for me with support of your videos?
Yeah, we encourage people to get local service as much as they can. Either try, do it on themselves, by themselves, or find local shops. We're working on creating a list or database of shops that have experience with them, that enjoy working on them, and customers have had good response with. There's still a lot of areas that we don't have covered very well, but
we'll help you find one.
yeah, we'll try to help you find that. If you have some suggestions, or oftentimes just bring a map up and Google repair shops, and you can tell a little bit from their websites what kind of work they do. A lot of big shops or big dealers tend to shy away from working on these. Small 1-2 person shops, that enjoy working on vintage stuff or customization. A lot of them really enjoy these, and some of the bigger shops too. We had one where the official policy was we don't touch anything we don't sell, but the mechanic said, "Well, contact me and I'll work on something out with you on my own." So most of they're pretty fun to work on for the most part, and so hopefully you can find somebody. We're getting some good experience with that.
I'm going to hop in really quick.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. That was so informative, and would encourage anybody that owns a Janus motorcycle or is thinking about owning a Janus motorcycle. That's the level of care and attention you get from John and his old friend
We
Woody.
should have mentioned Woody.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have a great service department here, and we're really proud of the work they do and the care they give each bike and the care they give each customer, just making sure that it's all you're all hunky-dory. If you're not enjoying your ride, you need to call us because that's our #1 goal. We want you to be on your bike enjoying the ride. All that said, we're really glad that John is here and Woody is here, and we're really glad that you've joined in for this video. A couple of announcements before we kick it. Go unlive. What do they call that? Turn the cameras off.
Turn it off.
Yeah, and take a little break before we start our bingo rally, bingo scavenger hunt. The bingo cards are now live on the website. So if you would like to start planning your ride, go to www.janusmotorcycles.com/rally. And the bingo cards are all there. There's 20 different configurations. So you should spend some time looking through the one you want. Save that one on your phone or print it off so you can have it in your pocket when you go do the ride. You will need that to make sure that you can win prizes. If you just want to go out and ride, we'd love to see your photos and love to see where you go today anyways. The most important part is that you enjoy the ride. We think the bingo game is a fun way to do that, but you do you. So get on the website, download the bingo cards, see which one you want to play, call your friends, get everything ready to go, drink some water, eat a granola bar, tie your shoes, comb your hair. See you at 1 p.m. See you later.